Welcome once again to our presentation, 2020 Vision, How Design Thinking Will Change Next Decade. My name is Kirk Walton, I'm with tapQA, and excited to have Ann Hungate with us today, Ann from Daring Systems.
Hi, Kirk, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, real quick overview of today's presentation. First of all, we will review traditional QA, in quotes, and how it's changed over the past decade. We'll talk about where QA professionals can go here as we enter the 2020s. And then a real deep dive into design thinking, key concepts of design thinking, and then why it's important in software development moving forward, especially for us as QA professionals. We'll also look at how to start incorporating design thinking into QA departments and just some quick wins that we could suggest to get going with design thinking. And then, of course, at the end of the presentation, we'll do a Q&A. So first of all, would like to find out a little bit more about you. So this is where we would ask you to use the polling feature. And the first question that we have is, what is your primary role within your organization? You should see a poll now that'll allow you to answer. So feel free to answer that question. And again, we just want to learn a little bit more about backgrounds of the folks that are here online today. So I'll give you about a minute to fill that out. It looks like at this point, most of you have voted, and it looks like the majority of the folks online today are QA professionals and practitioners. We also have a number of QA managers, also development managers and directors, and then business analysts as well. Excited to see a good number of business analysts, as this is a skill set that I think BAs, in a lot of cases, just kind of already have. But I know of a lot of BAs that are really incorporating design thinking into their way of work and their careers as well. So it's exciting to see. And welcome to everybody. Again, it looks like the majority of the folks here, though, are QA professionals and practitioners. So that is great. Next question is, what is your current knowledge and experience, or knowledge of and experience with design thinking? So I'll open that one up for you here as well. There's a little more reading involved with this question, I guess. So we'll give you a few more seconds on this one. Okay, so for those who, I don't know if you can even see the results online, but the majority of the folks, well over half, have heard the term, but other than that, no experience or understanding at all. We have a number of folks who have attended classes and presentations on design thinking. Two have, are with an organization that have started to use design thinking. And then we have a couple who have at least 2 years of design thinking experience. There's not a single person in here that considers himself an expert on design thinking. So great to see that the majority of you have heard the term design thinking, but don't really have any experience or understanding. So that, I feel like this presentation will be a perfect fit for you then. So, so thanks again for participating in that. We appreciate it. So moving on, wanted to see, again, an open-ended question here too. What are you hoping to take away from today's presentation? That can help us kind of as we give our presentation. This is one that I actually have you put in the chat room. And we'll take the first few answers and then we'll move on. Or the first few statements and then we'll move on.
We've got a general understanding of design thinking and more insight into the future of QA. We should hit both of those. bringing new ideas to our QA team. We're definitely going to hit that towards the end. Then Sarah says how to get executives on board with design thinking. We may or may not get to that one. That might be a conversation offline. Alex is looking for an understanding of what design thinking is and how to use it. We are going to hit that. And Steve says what it means and how it will affect test case writing. Yes, Steve, we're going to get right into that. That's actually section 4. We're going to do a combination when we go through what is design thinking. We're going to show you examples. And then when we apply it to QA, we're going to take you right into how you can change the way you're building your test artifacts to incorporate design thinking practices.
Perfect. Well, thanks everyone for participating in that. We'll certainly, feel free to use the chat room during the course of the presentation as well. We'll typically try to save most questions till the end, but we do ask a few questions along the way as well. So we'll move on. First of all, really quick about tapQA, again, the organization here that we're putting this on. We're one of the country's largest pure play software testing consulting services firms. So QA consulting is all we do. We're completely focused in QA and the areas just around QA as well. We provide the talent and services that help organizations really improve the impact of QA within their larger organizations as a whole. We are, again, an outstanding partner for on-site or onshore testing services. We do have our QHQ here in Minneapolis, where we bring in a lot of quality assurance consulting work, but we also provide consultants on-site as well. We do contract for hire work, really anything around QA, whether it's test automation, staff augmentation around manual testing, data testing, performance testing, really anything that falls into QA is something that we at tapQA can help with. And Anne, please tell us more about Daring Systems.
Well, Daring Systems actually started as a QA strategy firm, but really started to help then organizations improve their operations through transparency. We developed you can go through all the bullets there, Kirk. We developed a fact-based operations framework, which is really understanding where are you now, know your numbers and dashboards. We have formed, through this work, we learned that a lot of organizations were doing work they didn't need to do, which is what brought Daring into the design thinking game and really getting engaged with leaders who are helping organizations decide what's most important based on what their clients think is most important. So that's what Daring Systems does.
Cool.
And I've been working in technology now for over 20 years. I've worn most of the hats in IT. And what I'm really excited about today, this webinar, is that we don't have cameras on because I have 2 teenage daughters. So I get a lot of eye rolling in true life. So I won't be able to see the eye rolls today.
Good, and hopefully neither of us will be eliciting too many eye rolls and everything, but about me, I've been in consulting services for right around 20 years. I started my career in 1999 as a Lotus Notes consultant. Raise your hand if you've never even heard of Lotus Notes. Or maybe raise your hand if you have heard of Lotus Notes, I guess.
Oh my God, I loved Lotus Notes.
It was, I mean, we could spend an entire podcast kind of like celebrating how awesome Lotus Notes was in the late 90s, but at any rate, that's how I got my start. In the meantime, I've been in a lot of different roles as well. I established a recruiting practice at tapQA in 2012. Currently, I'm more on the marketing and business development side. Again, kind of just wear multiple hats for the organization. I'm really passionate about this industry. I mean, we work with so many great people here at tapQA, and we work with so many great clients nationwide. And it's just a firm belief of mine that great people make great products, we make great software, and just excited to be a part of a company that's such a part of that, and an industry that's such a part of that as well.
Well, and Kirk, I think this is a really key point. Quality is a slightly different domain than the other professions in IT, because we put the client first. We put the brand first. You know, we are really about the experience of users before we are about tools or technology. So, or, you know, we have to use this language or we have to use this tool. What we have to do is make sure we're getting the best quality product in the hands of our users. And I think as we move into digital transformation, this is the domain, the technology domain, that's going to make the difference.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree with you more, Ann. So cool. So getting into the presentation. So first of all, just a review of what we call traditional QA, again, air quotes, and how it's changed the past decade. So in the 2010s, as we began the decade, QA teams really were doing what, again, quote unquote, traditional QA teams did. And that was the primary role, focusing more on detecting defects, identifying risk, probably more so than anything else. We had a position of authority within the SDLC, being that we were kind of the gatekeepers. We were the last stop before new features and functions hit the market. This was a blessing and a curse because QA teams helped preserve the quality of a product, and it helped protect the brand and reputation of a company. But oftentimes we were thought of as a bottleneck. We slowed things down. We prevented companies from getting software to the market as fast as they wanted to. So as digital technology grew and more devices entered the market, the classic role of QA as a protector of the core and, again, brand guardian started to morph and change. The need grew for digital companies to roll out technology a lot faster. And so fast, in fact, they started letting customers find problems themselves as opposed to waiting for QA. Raise your hand if you maybe experienced some of that with your own companies, where QA all of a sudden was bypassed in a lot of cases just to get software out to the market. Yeah, we have a lot of hands being raised.
Yeah, we're in the double digits.
Yeah.
How do we bypass QA?
Right, exactly. So we became the villain in a lot of cases, or at least, the bottleneck that was preventing organizations from failing fast. So QA professionals, though, they typically stood their ground. The products that we were working on were usually so mission critical and so important. It wasn't just that we were, making products that could put cat ears on selfies. We were doing some much more important stuff than that. So we stood our ground, and yet some of the world's biggest software organizations started the trend of moving QA into the hands of their customers and just saying, it's okay if, we have a couple of defects, our customers will let us know that. Without really realizing just how dangerous that was. And in many cases, users were happy to provide the feedback and correction, but in most cases, that feedback came in the form of a 1 or a 2-star review. So that's the biggest challenge I think that organizations faced, is that QA was seen as being too slow, and yet the risks involved were just a damage to their reputation and a lot of 1 and 2-star reviews. And in some cases, those products, maybe never reached the potential they could have because of, perceived bottleneck that QA had. So as we were in the 2010s, it really became the decade of automation in QA. So raise your hand again if you've heard in the past 10 years that QA roles will be eliminated due to the improvement in automated tooling. And again.
Yeah, there they go. They're flying up.
I think everybody it's certainly, it's something that we've all heard. It showed how much this decade really showed how much technology can help quality, but much of what is done in QA is repetitive and linear. And that work, it can be automated, but QA professionals, we, tend to be problem solvers and really dig in for the deeper things. And yet, as QA professionals, we felt the need to swing further into the technology side of the equation to build the skills and really reevaluate the role and the function itself. A lot of us felt that the future of the role required us to become more technical and adopt technical skills, even if it wasn't necessarily, in our comfort zone or in our wheelhouse. So with the shift to a focus on technology, great QA professionals and organizations never lost sight of the customer. These organizations and leaders knew the key was to automate what was repetitive, but keep the nonlinear and unpredictable testing in the hands of the creative contrarians like us that filled the QA teams across the world. So with Agile and DevOps, we kind of faced some new challenges. As QA teams were willing to adapt and adopt, they stayed relevant. But with Agile, we started to face some opposition from developers who have and still do argue that we do unit level automation. We don't need QA. Again, I'm sure probably just about everybody's heard that. QA remained essential because of the brand promise, and companies needed to ensure that their mistakes weren't going to ruin their reputation. But the last few years have been really hard for QA. I think DevOps, and we were talking about.
Oh, yeah, DevOps has been, I think, really tried to be the QA killer. And I heard that quote I mean, at least a dozen times in the last year. You know, we don't need QA. We do unit level automation. We're DevOps. We don't need QA. And that is such a focus on how we're building software that it's losing the emphasis that QA brings, which is, why are you building it? Who is using it? What is their experience like? What is the interconnection of a user experience, a business workflow, and system response? How do they relate, and how do they pose risk to the organization? And when you're focusing on how you're writing code and how you're automating, boy, man, you lose that. You lose the customer perspective.
Well, I think, like you said, I mean, we focus so much more on the how to do it with process and technology, and we forgot why we were doing it and who we were really benefiting. Mm-hmm. And with technology and everything that we've changed this decade, again, focusing more on the how, I mean, the space became noisier and really, really confusing as technical teams solved isolated problems with tools. And the quote that you gave me that I loved is, any quality professional will tell you rules before tools. And yet more and more tools every year, it seems like, come to market of how to make our lives, quote unquote, easier. And as companies have adopted Agile and put DevOps teams in place, quality issues are still persisting. In fact, they're even accelerating. We're becoming more efficient in releasing software, but the quality of the software in a lot of cases isn't getting any better. In fact, in a lot of cases, it's getting worse. I'm sure all of you can think of products that we've used that have faced quality issues after an incremental release after the last few years, where it became unusable for a while. In fact, I mean, raise your hand if you've stopped using a product altogether over the past couple of years due to consistently having defects. And again, a lot of
there they go, they're flying up.
So as we can see, I mean, QA is still critically important, even as we've become more efficient at releasing software. We're releasing faster software, but we're not necessarily releasing better software.
That's right.
So where do we go from here? Anne, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about where QA professionals will go in the 2020s.
Okay, well, this is great. And let's hit the next slide. So I love this slide because we all know that, was it 2017 was the year of the retail apocalypse. So as fast as we are changing tools and techniques and talking about how we can build software faster, we have major organizations that have been part of our community and our lives and our hearts for years closing because the attention was on how we build software, not on what do our customers want. So the idea of bringing quality, and I love the World Quality Report brought this out, we need to bring in QA faster because we are not any longer exclusively focused on how many defects we found. We are focused on the defects that matter to our customers, the perspective that matters to our customers. And I think World Quality Report is going in the right direction, but we need to go still a step farther. And let's hit the next slide, Kirk. We need to actually shift the pendulum slightly over to the right. I do like it to hit a little bit the middle, but we need to go slightly to the right for a while. So much of the linear activities of QA have been automated that our opportunity right now is speaking the language of the business. And speaking the language of the business means we're going to use the terms that matter to them. We're going to talk about our users, the personas that we are targeting as an industry. We're going to talk about them and what matters most to them when we're reporting defects. We're going to talk about the business workflows that are essential to our operation. You know, the reason we've got a printing press here, and I don't know if everybody's, it looks a little bit like a guillotine. It is not a guillotine. It's a printing press. And I love the printing press as an analogy for where we are now, because the printing press might have been the beginning of the end of careers for scribes. But the truth is, scribes were doing beautiful hand-drawn indulgences and legal documents and accounting documents. And what the printing press did is, I mean, besides printing the Gutenberg Bible in mass, the printing press led to an explosion in literacy. And that literacy meant better communication, better collaboration, and it created all sorts of careers we had never anticipated. You know, writers, poets, bookbinders, librarians, proofreaders. So digital transformation is not the end of QA. It is the beginning of a new transformation for QA, where we can again sit at that intersection of business, technology, and the customer. So let's go to the next slide. I don't know, I can't advance that. Can you advance it, Kirk?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
All right, so we've got in the chat windows, I'd love for you guys to type an answer. We'll grab the first 10 or 12. What's the biggest organizational challenge you face right now? I want to see how people answer. Okay, somebody answer. What's the biggest challenge, organizational challenge you're facing right now? Budget constraints, that's a good one. That's a very good one. No communication, yes. Let's go hit the no code, yes, right? It's hard to test when you don't have code. Short windows, perform duties, lack of requirements, scheduling channel, how to deliver faster. Oh, we all get that one, how to deliver faster. Balancing quality and time to market. Those are excellent answers. Supporting old product, less influence early in the cycle. I love these. I love these. So let's hit the next, let's go to the next slide. Those are all real, right? And other things you might hear is, well, we're not getting agile fast enough. Are we producing high enough quality deliverables? Are we doing on time, on budget, right? These are answers that we get. Let's go to the next slide, because this is a design thinking answer. Are we solving the right problems the right way? So we all naturally fall into a trap of talking about how we're doing our jobs, right? There's so much skill and technique and knowledge that is required to be a thorough quality professional, that sometimes we focus very heavily on what it's taking to do the job well. And design thinking is offering us the opportunity to take a look from the outside in and saying, are we as an organization doing the things that matter most the best way? So it's a subtle shift. So with that, I know a lot of people, so we've got about more than 50% have heard of it or had some awareness, and we've got some folks who it's happening in their organization. But we're gonna do a level set for the next 5-10 minutes on what design thinking is. And I want to thank actually one of our participants. We have Kenya Odur participating today, and she is one of really the best design thinking experts I've worked with, and she helped with these definitions. So we're here to improve the ability to create innovative products for the customers and prospects by framing deliverables around direct user value. Now think back to the slide, you guys, of the retail apocalypse. The retail apocalypse happened because organizations were focused on how they do things. Can we get a copy of the deck is the question. And I believe this is all gonna be posted on
Yes,
on the YouTube channel.
We can certainly provide a copy of the deck as well, just a link to our PowerPoint slides for sure.
Okay, so if we think about the retail apocalypse, that is because organizations focus so heavily on how getting efficient at what they do. We need to go back to innovative products. Why are we doing it and for whom? All right, let's hit the next slide. So right now, when we think of design thinking, it happens early in the process. We think of design thinking as something our product team does or our UX you know, our UX team or folks really up front where they're doing discovery and definition. That's where the focus of design thinking is. And we as QA professionals are sitting a little bit later in the life cycle. So what we're going to go over today is make sure everybody understands design thinking, and all of a sudden you're going to see the opportunity to not only change the way you are delivering QA, but you're also going to start to link the beginning from discovery all the way to acceptance, link them together. So there's 4 key dimensions of design thinking we're going to talk about. They're opportunity statements, customer counsel, teamwork, and validation. I'm not going to go that heavily into teamwork because, again, that's going to be unique to your organization, but we'll touch on it quickly. And we're going to go over customer counsel quickly too, because that'll be unique to your project. But let's hit the next slide about an opportunity statement. So an opportunity statement is a very structured, it's kind of a scientific way of looking at a problem. It's scientific and structured. When user and situation, I want to do something, right, so that something else can happen. We have the who, the what, and the wow, right? The who, the what, and the wow. And those of you, just show of hands, how many folks work in Agile environments right now? Yeah, we've got a bunch of hands going up. Mm-hmm. These opportunity statements look an awful lot like a gherkin, right? They look an awful lot like something we could actually write behavior-driven tests around, right? These are phenomenal input to QA teams. Let's hit the next slide, Kirk. So here's an example of one filled in. A self-employed general contractor who has a focus on billable hours, but also they're trying to get biz dev done. So that's a who. A what is they can propose and schedule their next work with a potential client. The wow is they can do it real time while performing current activities. Right? That's a lot. It's a big statement, but that's an opportunity. So if we go to the next one, I want to talk a little bit about what a customer counsel looks like and what it does. So if we are trying to build a solution that satisfies general contractors, we're going to put together a customer counsel. Now, we're not going to get all the general contractors, but we're going to get enough general contractors that we get a realistic perspective of what general contractors think. This is when I was in undergrad, one of my analytics was one of my majors, and I took my first class on statistics because understanding this concept that you don't need everybody to understand what most people want, and so you need to get a statistically significant sample, because as my first professor used to say about the true number, I guess capital N, he'd say only God knows that value. So we get a sample and we get the small n, and we still get the same effect as a capital N, but it's just a representation. So that's what a customer counsel is a representation of these users. Let's hit the next slide. And why I threw teamwork in here, it's a very important concept for design thinking. We're going to give you an example, but it's general. Teamwork's going to look a little different in organization. But when we are looking at the viability of then what our customer counsel says we need to do, one team can't decide what needs to get done. I'm going to ask for a show of hands. How many of you have been asked to build and validate something that in no way possible could happen? Like, it is not technically feasible. And clearly people don't understand how the data are arranged across the applications, or they never would have asked for this. Yes, it has happened to all of us, you guys. So the notion of teamwork and why design thinking is what we as quality professionals have been asking for 20 years is one of the essential components. The top 4 components of design thinking is teamwork. That means product management, design, engineering, QA, architecture, all weigh in. We weigh into the business viability and importance. We weigh into the user experience and the trends and preferences, and we weigh into the viability and constraints, what could get in our way of getting it done. So it's an essential piece of design thinking. Let's hit the next slide. Validation milestones are, when I was first getting trained in design thinking, I'm like, validate, this is QA early in the life cycle. Let's hit the next slide, because validation milestones, we actually play back what people have said they wanted. And you can make go, no-go decisions early in the life cycle. And I'm sure you guys are all like me, you're quality geeks, right? So we're Deming and Duran disciples and Crosby and all the fathers of quality. I wish there was a mother of quality. Maybe that's me. But the fathers of quality, they advocated for things like we need to be able to stop the line, right? Stop the line. That's what playbacks let us do. It lets you play back your progress and say, is this where we want to be? If not, let's make an adjustment. This is the Daring Systems Know Your Numbers. If you know your numbers, if you know right away that this is this has no business viability, or the user experience is off, or it's technically infeasible, stop before you invest. I have two stories I'm going to tell before we go to the next slide. One is about a while ago, a little more than a decade ago. I was working on a project, and guys, we were maybe 4 or 5 years into it with a double-digit sized team before anyone had the courage to throw up the red flag and say this, or the white flag, and surrender. Right? People like, this can't be done, and we really need to have the courage to have that happen sooner. About 2 years ago, I was working on an engagement with a client that had, maybe 6 or 7 priorities they wanted to do. And they stopped and engaged a design thinking team, and through the customer counsel, found that how the internal organization had prioritized them was exactly the opposite of what the customers wanted to do. And this is so important because before they started to design and develop the solution, the priority order got flipped, and the lowest priority item bumped to the top. And the top priority item that had bumped to the bottom just fell off. And that had been the largest portion of the time and the cost. So by bringing design thinking in early, this organization was able to get to market faster at a lower cost with better adoption. So pretty cool. All right, let's hit the next slide. So that's what playbacks are. And this is the most important slide, because as we think of design thinking as something that happens just in product teams and UX teams, design thinking is actually set up to support delivery. Agile, waterfall, it doesn't matter. It is set up to run all the way through the software lifecycle. And that's why we're talking about it. At each one of these points, you guys, we've got milestone playbacks. These milestone playbacks are the equivalent of quality gates. They're like quality gates 2020. They're chances for each of us, no matter our role in the organization, they're chances for us to stop the line. When we introduce the concept of design thinking, or when our leadership teams promote design thinking, the really cool part is they're saying, yeah, you guys, we're open. We know that the idea isn't perfect, and we welcome the engagement, involvement, and feedback early on, so we can actually fail fast. Make sense? I'm going to stop and see, is anybody have questions before we hit the next slide? I want to just throw them into the chat box. All right, let's go ahead and hit the next slide, Kirk. So that first opportunity statement we saw, it was pretty big, but what's the link from opportunity statements all the way to quality is we can actually break them down and create full traceability. These opportunity statements become multiple epics. Epics have features, features have stories, and we can start to trace our user experience all the way down to the story level tests that we write and the epic level tests that we write. And when we do end-to-end testing or full workflow testing, we're actually doing opportunity statement testing. You guys, I can't even tell you how well this resonates with your product manager. When you start to report your tests in terms of the opportunity statements they framed, you report your test results by opportunity statements, it's a game changer because it's bringing the beginning and the end together, and it is, right, it's letting you play in that intersection of technology, business, and the customer, which is where QA thrives. So let's hit the next slide. I love this one, and why we put this opportunity statement in here, because you guys all have an opportunity. As a QA professional, I must identify the impacts of my business processes and technological advances on my quality organization to determine where to direct my focus and further develop my skills in order to remain competitive and marketable, right? You guys are the who. And the what is, where is your organization going? Where are trends going? Where do they have to go? Because nobody wants their organization to be a victim of a digital apocalypse. And the wow is, not only are you relevant, you are competitive, you are sought after because you're a quality professional that works in design thinking. All right, let's take the next one. And the question you want to ask yourself is, if I don't do this, and this is one of the key things we can bring immediately to QA, is saying, what happens if I don't do it? What if I don't fulfill this opportunity statement? What happens? Guess what? What happens? This is a chance for us to write negative test conditions and use our creative contrarian perspective to look at problems from multiple angles. Okay. Let's, now we're going to go, there's two sections here. So before we go, anybody have any questions on design thinking?
Well, this is really exciting stuff, Anne. I know that tapQA, I mean, this is something that we have really embraced here in the I guess the recent times, and really excited to have our professionals grow with design thinking as well. I know one thing we wanted to talk about is just how to start incorporating design thinking into QA department.
And I think there's a couple ways we can do it. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. I mean, quality is the right place, all right? Because we are at that intersection of customer, technology, and the business. And the reason why we have to be the ones who go here, you guys, is because your developers are working on learning new tools. They are way down in the weeds of tools and connectivity. Your business partners might be evaluating market trends. Your architecture team is looking at overall like roadmap and what's feasible. We are the domain, and I'm welcome. We've got some BAs on this call too. I include you guys in the we. because I think at this point, bringing business analysts and quality analysts together is essential, because it's about the beginning and the end coming together. And the other thing I really want to talk about is, let's take design thinking beginning to end, right? There's a huge opportunity for us to have impact and value by connecting the beginning and the end. Well, and so we've created an opening. Kirk, why don't you take these next couple?
Sure. Well, and like you said, I mean, really a big opportunity for us as QA professionals, and some of the things that you and I had in our conversation this weekend is just some of the quick wins, if you will. And one of them is just, or I guess getting started, is really just finding out how design thinking is being used in your organization. And from the poll we took earlier, it did appear that a number of you work for organizations that design thinking is not being used. So we'll address that as well. But for those who are using design thinking, finding out which teams use it, what are their key artifacts, and who has sponsored it. If you're
right, that tells you a lot about the energy and attention it's getting in your organization.
Exactly. And then for those that aren't using design thinking, you may have some great candidates within your own team that could champion these efforts. Really quick, I mean, I'm sure, and feel free to raise your hands, or we'll just kind of speak in hypotheticals, but, do you have any team members on your QA team that were BAs at one time? Or maybe they were product owners, or they've ever been in a role that influences the decisions around UI and UX? Or even someone that maybe came up maybe came out of college with a psychology major, or even someone that has a background in sales. I mean, someone who has a lot of customer experience, someone who has a lot of empathy, anyone with those particular strengths, those could be awesome candidates to help spearhead those efforts for design thinking. They're going to naturally fall into this world, if you will, maybe a lot quicker than others. So kind of identifying the champions or the scouts to be able to really get a sense of how to incorporate design thinking within your own organization. That's a great starting point. And secondly is, once you have your champion, or once you've identified the internal resources of the effort, be sure to get your whole team excited about the possibilities that design thinking has to offer. Your leadership should be aware of the top priorities of QA, being end user satisfaction. So design thinking is on their minds, even if they don't call it design thinking yet. It is on their minds. I mean,
it's hot.
Exactly. It's hot, and in some cases, like I said, I mean, leaders may not even know what it's called. A lot of them will, but maybe some of them won't. It's a great chance to leverage this opportunity. Another thing, to bring in training and consulting to help spread this awareness. So organizations like Daring Systems, like tapQA, to help roll out quick wins and start incorporating the language of design thinking. And then be open to updating your quality plans and test methods to help incorporate these quick wins. And Anne, that's certainly something that you have a lot of experience in.
Yes.
How to add design thinking directly to your quality plan.
You guys, this is the crux. This is the crux. Nothing drives me more crazy than getting test plans that say I am X% complete with my test execution, and I've discovered Y defects. My answer, I want to say to everybody, so what? Did you do your hardest tests first? Which are the most relevant? Tell me about the defects. Which customers did they hit? So what I want you to do is, when you're building your quality plans, ask for the opportunity statements. You need these opportunity statements to be input, so you can start to structure your tests so you are hitting the things that matter most to your customers first. And when you start this, when you ask for this, the opportunity statements as input, you create the opportunity to give output that says, right, I mentioned it earlier, opportunity statement focused reporting. So for each opportunity statement, maybe you list, these are the tests that support that opportunity statement, and how many of those have passed, or when they're scheduled to execute, right? So that's one way of looking at it. Let's hit the next one. I also want you guys to ask questions about the customer council. Get in there and understand the user, the personas who are users of your system, right? There may be one persona, there may be 6 personas, there may be 20. You have to understand them, because how cool if you can start organizing your test based on, we are going to validate the experience of this group today. So we're not even just doing low-level testing. We are saying this group follows these workflows and has these expectations. When you find out who is on their customer council and what mattered, and you organize your tests by persona, you create a reporting opportunity that's going to just blow away your product partners, your business leaders, and you're going to get the kind of response that you want. I show of hands, how many times have you been scratching your head because you've reported out that you've got critical defects and you're getting no response, right? People are not responding. You're like, are you guys nuts? Don't you see that the most code's late and I'm missing the 3 most important functions? It boggles my mind. But when you use these customer councils, mm-hmm. and you report them this way, you're going to get the attention you want instantly. Let's hit number 3. Wait, go ahead.
Really quick, what's a good example of, maybe multiple personas, and then just how one goes about forming that customer council with those personas?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you an example. We were working with a client who wanted to roll out a new mobile app that was aimed at, that actually supported their entire population. So what we had to do was get a view of the demographics of who their population is right now. So we needed to know age, income, education level, location. So we found that mix and created a customer council that was organized by that mix. So we were able to drive their preferences. Well, people of certain demographic groups had different preferences. But once we understood that breakdown, we talked with our product team and got them to be more specific about which group specifically these features were supposed to support. Because if there is, personally, my teenage daughters, Kirk, you mentioned earlier, cat ears and selfies. I don't really care if my selfie has cat ears. I don't wear cat ears in true life, and I don't want them. But my 14-year-old daughter not only wants cat ears, she wants whiskers and a little nose. So when I'm reporting the test results for cat ears on selfies, I'm not going to report that, old women like myself care about that. I'm going to report it on the demographic of the, 12 to 18-year-olds. Boom. I can report my test results. Maybe I went off on a tangent.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Right. Let's hit the next one. And guys, one of the biggest gifts to QA is validation milestones. These playbacks that we do at each point actually provide testing targets. So when at every point, and I know we looked earlier at life cycle, at every point we are providing a go, no go. What we have to do when we've assembled the entire system and we're doing end-to-end testing is reuse those validation milestones and make them some of our end-to-end test targets. When we do this, we gain the love, trust, and respect of our product and UX teams, because we're saying we heard you, we heard what was important, and now we have validated it from beginning to end. the executive team loves it because you've presented risk. Now this one's the hardest one, and it's the crux. And I want to be sensitive to time and still leave a few minutes for questions. You got to get engaged with the requirements analysts and your BAs. We have to stop building a wall between BAs and QAs. You have to sit together. When you are really leveraging design thinking the right way, you are able to create 3 different buckets of requirements. So you need user requirements. You've got your personas and you've got user requirements. Treat them as separate and distinct. Bucket 2, business requirements. We've got business needs and workflows. Get all of those out. Bucket 3, our system and non-functional requirements, request response pairs, performance, thresholds, things like that. Then when we are creating meaningful, structured, comprehensive tests, we pull one from each bucket and start creating combinations. Guys, this is DevOps. This is true DevOps. When you bring design thinking in, you organize your requirements by user, business, and system workflow. You create the opportunity to automate, and the real constraint in system development, and the constraint is that breakdown of what our customers really want to what we built. So now I know we didn't leave a lot of time. Kirk, why don't you bring it home?
Sure. Well, just, some of the higher points, again, that, quality professionals must, as we move forward, they must understand what design thinking is and see that it is a reusable structure that aligns with so many QA practices. We must be able to ask for and be able to consume design thinking deliverables as a part of our projects, and really bring design thinking techniques to our existing works. And then exploring career opportunities earlier in the life cycle as well. So again, if you're not already learning and incorporating design thinking into your work, now is the time. Again, a quick plug for us, and then we'll open up to Q&A, but we can help kickstart the design thinking journey within your organizations. Both Daring Systems and tapQA, we provide training and consulting services to ensure your organization is best prepared to add maximum value moving forward. Feel free to comment in the chat room or reach out to us directly. You have Anne's email, my email, our websites, great opportunity to learn both about our organizations. And I know we're really excited about our partnership with Daring Systems, the 2 organizations working really closely together from both a strategic and then tactical standpoint when it comes to design thinking, and really across all aspects of QA. So opening it up for Q&A. Feel free to type this into the Q&A section or into the chat room. And we'll take a few minutes here. It is 1:56 Central Time, so we still have a few minutes. And I think, Anne, you and I can both stay quite a while if you want to hang out and ask questions. Maybe one quick one, Anne, to get started before while others are typing in. Because, what would be your number one quick win for an organization looking to add design thinking for the first time? We went through a number of these ourselves, but if there was just one starting point, what would you recommend that would be?
Oh, personas. Easy. Get your hands on the personas for the system. That lets you prioritize. That lets you prioritize your test. All right, Hari sent us a question. He said, can you prescribe any good books to read on design thinking to start with? Let's see. I'm going to, there are a number. I'm texting Kenya. Which books are you hot with your class right now? Let's see what she sends back. I'm gonna let Kenya answer this question, because this is her space. She is teaching it
And I actually,
at university.
Yeah, and Kenya, I just made a panelist because she's great to field a lot of these questions as well. So Kenya, if you have an answer, you can feel free to type it in the chat room as well.
And we can get an answer back on that. Mm-hmm. I've got, my books are probably 2-3 years old. Sure. So we've got another question that said, how do you present design thinking to an organization that has many different teams and faces communication challenges? I love this question because I think we all face this. I would first start with your product team or your UX team and ask a friend who works in one of those groups if there's anything going on right now. So, I went to a design thinking training. I understand the concepts. Who in the organization is using it and advocating it for right now? So the first thing I do is assume that there's some activity. The second thing I do is find somebody to partner with and be willing to read a book and do a TED Talk on it yourself. Or heck, invite us to do a TED Talk. I mean, we can boil this down to 15 minutes for you. Anybody will give you 15 minutes. They may not give you an hour. Do a little research, find out what's going on, and be prepared to give a TED Talk on why it matters.
Cool. One question that kind of spins off of that, and maybe from personal history, what's the biggest roadblock that you faced that an organization is pretty excited about design thinking, they're ready to go, or at least they think they're ready to go, and then there's a roadblock that all of a sudden came into play? Maybe what was that roadblock, or what were some of the roadblocks that you did?
Oh, this is a great question. The number one roadblock is, but give us your delivery plan. Give us your delivery plan. I understand you're doing design thinking. What's your install date? And this insistence that you provide a schedule for when this is going to happen, even though you don't have agreement on yet what it is that should happen. There's two things you can do to combat that. Thing number one is make your delivery schedule the schedule of when you're going to be doing design thinking and when your design thinking deliverables are going to come out. That's the first thing to do. I hear you. Here's our delivery schedule. Boom. The second thing to do is put an emphasis on the wireframes. So really good design thinking, once we get through first discovery, you do discovery, you have your user council. The next thing you're going to get are some prioritized system features. You can generate wireframes from that point. The sooner you can get to some wireframes, your leadership team's going to feel like they have a concrete deliverable. So it's a really good question, but make your delivery plan when you're going to do design thinking and try to accelerate your journey to wireframes.
Right. So I have a couple more minutes here to take any additional questions. And maybe, again, just a little more history or a background on Daring Systems. When did you find Daring Systems? And just maybe a little bit more of a history over the last few years of how you've grown.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Daring Systems started 3 years ago, really because the impetus was companies had this desire to automate away their QA teams, and it hit my heart. You can't do this. These are the people that keep your company, that they're the mortar between the bricks. And so to really help organizations navigate this movement to DevOps and digitization, how do you leverage the quality professionals? And that's when we really discovered what was driving organizations to say, let's automate away QA. It was that they didn't understand their current cost and their current operations. And that's how we developed the fact-based operations framework. And, oh, here we go. I'm going to type an answer here. So that's how Daring Systems has grown. And we started out with a couple of clients and it just kind of took off from there. We also use a partner model. So we will partner with organizations that will go deep into a space. So when we do fact-based operations and we see where an organization is lacking, we bring in a partner that focuses specifically on that. So if they're really struggling with QA, we've got TAP to engage. So that's how we work with people.
Okay, great. We'll leave it open for maybe one more question or two more questions. Again, wanted to thank everyone for attending today. And once again, plug for us. I mean, we're, again, incredibly passionate about this work and really helping organizations reach their potential. Excited to work with you. So if you have any questions or how you could best get started with design thinking, please reach out to Anne, please reach out to me, check out our websites, and we'd love to help, absolutely love to help. And Anne, you had typed this into the chat room. I'm not sure if everyone
can can everybody see that it says the prescribed good books to read? So we put two out there, the Design Thinking Playbook and Designing for Growth. Those are probably the two best books you can pick up right now to get acclimated with it and write your TED Talk.
Okay. Design Thinking Playbook and Designing for Growth. And I will include that in our follow-up email as well. And I assume those are available at wherever you purchase books. I would guess you could find those.
Yes.
Great. Well, again, we'd like to thank everyone for attending today. It was really worthwhile talking, and I really appreciate you joining us. We're happy to field any questions after the fact. You have our email addresses here. But yeah, excited to, it looks like we actually might have, just a couple of thank yous from the chat room, and do appreciate that. But yeah, thank you again for attending our session, and we would love to hear from you if you have any further questions. Anne, do you have any last thoughts as we move along?
Oh, good. Go forth and prosper.
There we go. Well, thank you again, everyone, and hope you have a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week. And thanks again for attending.